No Missouri portal moves yet, but a couple of players seem fairly inevitable. Let's talk about them on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso, and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball, and a couple of former Tigers find some pretty good landing spots. Kim English, Sophie Cunningham, going to talk about that a little later on the show. And also, I think, well, some anticipated moves here in the portal, plus this Missouri freshman class, has me thinking that Dennis Gates is really going to pick up the pace again this season in Columbia on the basketball side. So let's talk about all that on the program. First, I do want to say today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. So if you caught my most recent episode of Locked On Mizzou, this past Friday, I talked a lot about Bryson Tiller, the former Kansas Jayhawk, the freshman this past season who entered the transfer portal. And reportedly, Missouri, one of the four teams most interested in this young player, and with mutual interest, I should say. One of those teams, Miami, Michigan, another, Arizona, and also Missouri. So not only was I asking Missouri fans, hey, is this a guy that, well, should Missouri fans ever be okay with taking a former Kansas Jayhawk? Well, perhaps we'll make Bryson Tiller do whatever rituals are necessary. The proper penance will be paid. But I will say, after watching Tiller play basketball, specifically against Missouri, by the way, a few months ago this past December, got to say I was duly impressed. I really was. And by the way, remember when Missouri started Javon Porter and Honor Boateng in that ball game? Well, that feels like a million years ago now. But I have to say, watching that game, I'm immediately reminded that Flory Badunga, who ended up another player, another big man transferring away from Bill Self and his program, ended up at Louisville. Some people think he's the top-rated player in the entire portal. Well, I will say that Badunga and Tiller together were never exactly the most elegant offensive fit. And I think that I like Tiller when Flory was actually out of the game and just sort of allowed to roam around and do what he does best offensively. Well, I think that might be a plus for Missouri, because defensively, I think Tiger fans already saw that Tiller can absolutely be a menace. Not only did he block 5 shots in the game, he's not exactly a Dikembe Mutombo-like center or a Trent Burns-like center who is immobile. Not at all whatsoever. He moves extremely well as an explosive athlete, and he's not the type of guy defensively that you're going to be able to play off the floor with more perimeter-oriented type of players. And really, defensively, that's really going to be Tiller's biggest thing, because if you notice, he started the game guarding Mark Mitchell, by the way, and played good, really solid one-on-one defense against Mitchell. Now, of course, Mitchell being the excellent all-SEC caliber player that he is, and a senior, by the way, he was going to get his. He got most of them in the fast break when he got away from Tiller. Of course, a couple times he scored one-on-one against Tiller, but Tiller never made it easy. That was the thing that I noticed most. And what I really noticed is, including the first half and starting the second half, well, at one point, Luke Northweather was on the court, and yes, it was Badunga, the number one player in the portal, who's guarding Northweather. Meanwhile, Tiller continues to guard Mark Mitchell. As a freshman, Bill Self is trusting this young man to guard Mark Mitchell. Now, they brought double teams and all that good stuff, but I'm just telling you, that tells me something. That tells me that Self has tremendous trust in this guy defensively. A lot of times we look at these young, high-level 6'10", 6'11" athletes and say, wow, he's got tremendous defensive upside. Well, Tiller, frankly, is already there. He's a really good defensive player already. And offensively, he's far from a goon as well. Still not a ton of polish just yet, but there's still a lot of upside there. I would say the fact that he's a 70% free throw shooter is encouraging, and he can put the ball on the floor and at least be trusted to handle the ball as the pinch post guy. You'll see this a lot in Dennis Gates' offense, where a big guy will catch the ball sort of on the wing a little bit, and basically a lot of guys will cut off of him. You'll get a lot of handoff action from that big guy. I think, well, Tiller's a really interesting guy there, really interesting screen and roll guy, and he's at least shown the willingness to step outside and shoot a three-pointer, although sub 30% last year on not a ton of attempts, nothing to write home about just yet. I would say that, again, that 70% free throw clip does give you some hope for the future. Made a turnaround jumper in the middle of the zone confidently at one point in the game. And most of all, for a guy just that size, that athletic, really solid body control, just a calming presence out there. A guy doesn't look like he would shy away at all from the physicality of being a full-time center in the SEC too. And I do totally understand the hardcore Missouri fans who absolutely hate Kansas. Hey, I'm right there with you, by the way. I just feel like this is inevitable, that there's going to be a Kansas guy that crosses over at a certain point. So if this is inevitably going to happen here over the next few years or decades, whatever it might be, let's at least make it somebody good. And I think Bryson Tiller looks pretty good. And what if, here's the other side of this, by the way, this could end up actually hurting Kansas. By the way, you see Parker Braun, yes, I'm calling him Braun. That's not how you spell Brown, people. Parker Braun went the other way, but that didn't really affect anybody's. It'd be one thing if Parker went there and just thrived at Kansas. Well, that didn't happen. Now, what if it goes the other way? What if Tiller goes from Kansas to Missouri? He actually thrives under Dennis Gates. Well, that could actually be a huge talking point in recruiting and all that good stuff. Maybe this is the stake that you drive into the heart of the era of the Bill Self era once and for all. Is that a fanciful fan fiction possibly type of notion there? Well, maybe, but just a thought. I'm just saying there are ways that this could actually, you're worried about, hey, I'm being a fan here, and I totally get that. Well, what if the ultimate result for being a fan is, let's help finish off this Kansas basketball program and Bill Self forever? Maybe Bryson Tiller can help do just that. But most importantly, I think that he fits really well into what Dennis Gates wants to do, especially I think with Jason Crow Jr. in the fold. And one reason I'm talking a lot about Bryson Tiller once again is not only was it reported by several people, including Power Mizzou, that Tiller is took a visit to Missouri this past weekend, but also I mentioned those 4 teams, including the Tigers, that are after Tiller's services. Well, Santos Cyril, the big man from Georgia, has ended up with Miami. Now, could Cyril and Tiller potentially play together? Sure, but obviously there's not unlimited funds at any of these programs. That just makes me think, if Cyril's there, that seems less likely that Tiller would make that move. Again, I think sort of an elegant fit there offensively as well. And same thing with Tennessee's J.P. Estrella transferring to Michigan. That takes 2 big-time players out of competition for Missouri. So seemingly it's down to Missouri and Arizona, unless there's somebody who comes in here at the 25th hour, that type of deal. But it just seems like more and more that the stars are kind of aligning for Bryson Tiller and Missouri. We shall see. And once again, while the portal is maybe moving a little bit more slowly this year than in the past, well, there is one more player that if I had to put even money on it, I would definitely put my money on Jir Jones coming to Missouri as well. Nothing official here, but Kim English certainly had an up-close and personal look at Jones. So let's talk about that player, plus where English ended up. A pretty nice landing spot for him, quite honestly. But, before we talk about that, the NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters. Every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. And here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. And when it comes to the NBA, like I've said before, to me, it's the Thunder, the Spurs, the Celtics, the Nuggets. If anybody else wins the championship, I'd be pretty stunned, I have to say. And I'm a little stunned that the Cleveland Cavaliers have the same odds as the Nuggets at 11-1. You won't see me putting my hard-earned dollars on James Harden in the playoffs, ladies and gentlemen. But the Nuggets at 11-1 seems like a pretty decent value, I got to say. But regardless, whatever you think, head to FanDuel.com to get started. It is FanDuel. Play your game. Get Locked On Mizzou ad-free with the Everydayer Club, plus members-only Discord access. Join at LockedOnMizzou.supercast.com. And, of course, former Missouri Tiger Kim English was the coach at Providence these past 3 seasons, where he got a up close and personal look at Jir Jones this past season. Now, Jones, just a freshman this past year, has 3 years of eligibility to play. And anytime I see a perimeter player, I have to say in modern basketball, I immediately shoot my eyes to the three-point line. And, well, just 12 of 31 for Jones from the three-point line last season. So not a terrible percentage by any means, but just not a ton of attempts. So I'm not really sure what to make of that. But I do know that just looking at Jones a little bit, well, the guy is a driving machine at 6'6", a wing, and definitely a fast break type of guy too. So to me, along with the potential addition of Bryson Tiller, but certainly with Jason Crow Jr. in the fold and with Tony Bryant in the fold as well, I think he and Tiller have a similar athletic profile. I think you'll see Missouri play much more quickly this year. Missouri had at center at all times this season, either Sean Phillips or Trent Burns was your center for the most part. And those are two guys who are going to slow you down a little bit for better or for worse. I just think that Missouri will be playing a much quicker pace this coming season. So I just think that would make a lot more sense, especially with Crow in the fold. One thing that I think maybe won't change a lot, Missouri does seem to be still targeting players who can draw a lot of fouls, and Jones fits the bill there. And I do wonder, he is 6'6", I assume a wing, but maybe does he take on some of those power forward-like responsibilities, maybe with Trent Pierce playing the three? Who cares really if one's 6'10" or 6'6", that type of deal. Now, obviously Jones is not going to be a rim protector in the SEC at 6'6", but an absolutely excellent rebounder statistically. So he could really make a big difference there. I got to say, while it seems like the portal itself might be moving a little bit slowly right now, I think Missouri's offense is going to be moving a lot more quickly next season, maybe defensively as well too. Now, I will say, since I did suggest that Missouri needs to set the market in terms of the center position, well, it's natural that people might be getting a little nervous here, especially with some of the guys I had brought up, like J.P. Estrella and Samto Cyril coming off the board. Well, I just think that means that probably Missouri will have settled this position one way or the other. I'd say likely with Bryson Tiller at this point, but probably one way or the other over the next day or two. And really, if you look at the rest of the center market, it's not like there aren't still great players out there. And in fact, a couple guys I specifically brought up well before there'd been any movement whatsoever, or really any rumors in regards to who Missouri's been in contact with. One guy, Anton Bonk, for example, the center from Charlotte. Well, Michigan State is evidently the strong rumor for where he's going to end up. Also, Drew Fielder was the other one, a center from Boise State. Apparently, the Washington Huskies and the Nebraska Cornhuskers are believed to be your leaders in the clubhouse for that young man's services. So a couple of guys that I felt like could definitely take a jump up to the next level. Well, never apparently got in contact with Missouri, at least not that we know of, and at least not as of yet. But evidently, a couple guys who are going to make a big step up in competition. Again, Nebraska was pretty doggone good last season. Obviously, Michigan State with Bonk. I mean, if Tom Izzo wants him, I'll take him. That's for darn sure. So while neither one of those guys ended up on the radar necessarily for Missouri, at the end of the day, like Dennis Gates, I'm going to pat myself on the back for the evaluation on that one. And I did bring up the Denver Nuggets in the FanDuel read. Well, it was just 1 year ago that Michael Malone was fired by the Denver Nuggets, just a couple of seasons after winning the NBA championship. Well, as you surely have heard by now, Michael Malone now the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. I got to say that was a move that came out of nowhere for me as well. Didn't see his firing coming this time last year. Well, I didn't see him getting hired by the Tar Heels either. But I'm not even saying it won't work out. I'm just saying I didn't see it coming. Well, Kim English joining Michael Malone at North Carolina. Now, while I didn't specifically see this move coming, I did see Kim English becoming, an assistant at a really big-time program. I thought my guess was, hey, maybe he'll head back and chill with Rick Barnes in Tennessee for another stop there. But, hey, North Carolina, that's about as good of a landing spot as Kim English is going to get. And speaking of landing spots, well, I'm happy to see that Sophie Cunningham re-signed with the Indiana Fever after a pretty long, drawn-out lockout period. A labor dispute there. I don't know if it was it a strike? Was it a lockout? I think ultimately it was a lockout. Regardless of the semantics there, a labor dispute that was solved and ended up being a pretty good deal, I think, for both sides. The players got huge increases in their salary. So good for them as a casual observer of the WNBA, as a fan of Caitlin Clark, a fan of Sophie Cunningham as well. I love to see it, especially after, an injury-plagued season for Clark last season. I just felt like Cunningham was kind of the perfect teammate for Clark, really, as somebody who can step out and make a three-pointer and handle the ball a little bit as well, a good defensive player with decent size. And just as importantly, hey, by the way, Sophie Cunningham, good for her, by the way, had a Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition shoot in the past week or so, it looked like. She put out on her Instagram. So good for her. And while Sophie Cunningham, hey, she's the mayor of Columbia, maybe she could be Miss Columbia apparently as well. And don't let her beautiful looks fool you, because she's got definitely a spicy side, as she likes to say as well. And that's one of the reasons I like her with Clark, honestly, just from a physicality standpoint. It really felt like Clark got a little bit of the rookie hazing a couple of years ago. So I don't think Sophie's going to be putting up with that. A good player, not just a good player, but a good friend and a good bodyguard for Caitlin Clark as well. So I'm going to be excited to see that for sure. And you know what? Coming up on the show, let's talk a little football as well. Missouri checking in the S&P Plus ratings, by the way, for this upcoming season. Would you believe it, 20th? Yeah, the S&P Plus rankings, the forward-looking, projections, they usually like the Tigers. Maybe a little too much, but hey, some reasons for optimism coming up on the program in just a little bit. But you know what? First, I got to tell you about TurboTax. It is tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. So Mizzou football not only breaking in a new starting quarterback in Austin Simmons, but a whole bunch of new faces on what was a really good defense this past season as well. And yet S&P Plus has Missouri at number 20, checking in nationally here. That's pretty impressive, I got to say. Missouri has not established itself as a blue blood program per se, one of the absolute elite by any means. But that's a pretty good amount of respect, again, for a team with a new quarterback, without a lot of, well, returning faces on the defensive side of the ball as well, and plenty to fix and replace in that Missouri passing game as well. But still just a ton of respect there. I think that speaks to what Missouri has established over the last 3 seasons. When 2025 is considered a disappointing season by almost every Missouri fan, and yet the Tigers go 8-4 in the regular season, could be a lot worse, that's for sure. And the reality is it's more likely to be at least better with the Missouri passing game this season. So if what Missouri has already established under Eli Drinkwitz, which is a solid running game, a solid defense, especially in recent seasons here, I think it's a pretty good bet that the Tigers are going to be a tough out once again. Unfortunately, as a lot of people have pointed out, and the discussion has now become, did Missouri miss their window? The window conversation is now, that's going to be the big one. The previous couple off seasons, it's been about Missouri's schedule. Well, now that the schedule is more difficult again, now it's about, did Missouri miss its window? That's my prediction for the narrative you're going to get tired of this offseason. But not only the Tigers check in at number 20 in the S&P Plus projections over at ESPN.com. By the way, I've loved these projections way before, a decade before they were involved with ESPN. But regardless, 6 top 20 teams will Missouri face in 26, according to these projections. Number 4, Georgia. Number 6, Texas. Number 9, Texas A&M. Number 12, Oklahoma. Number 16, Ole Miss. And number 19, Florida. Now, I'm fading Florida, as everybody knows. But I could be wrong. That's for certain. I could be completely wrong about Florida and their new coach. I just tend to think in year one, I'm more bullish on the Auburn Tigers, as those of you especially watch the SEC squad are aware of. And speaking of off-season narratives, of course, the Big Ten is taking a victory lap, as you might imagine, and maybe a well-deserved one as well. I will just point out, this is mostly a discussion about football. Once again, the SEC's dominance. Again, the Tigers 20th in S&P projections nationally. That's good for 10th in the SEC. Compare that to the Big Ten, which has 6 teams, to the SEC's 10 teams in the top 20. So I got to say, it's hard to disagree with the Big Ten and their results at this point in terms of championships. I will say it may be cold comfort for you traditional SEC fans. I still think the Southeastern Conference overall is the tougher league, but you know what? If you're the type of person that cares about brand loyalty, league loyalty, well, the SEC is probably just going to have to take it from the Big Ten until they win another national title. That's just all there is to it. But hey, thanks for joining me here on the podcast as per usual. And also definitely check out the Everydayer Club for ad-free shows and members-only Discord access. LockedOnMizzou.supercast.com. And until next time, I am John Miller. Thanks for listening to Locked On Mizzou.